because I have never done one of these before ever. So it's going to be awesome.
Cool.
So for those of you tuning in right now, we're with Nathan Agin. He is the author of the blog Nonstop Awesomeness, and his new book is Nonstop Awesomeness in the Kitchen, Recipes from the Road, Volume 1, and is now available on his website at nonstopawesomeness.me, along with video tutorials, audio tutorials, and more. So that's what he is doing right now. So I guess, sir, the first obvious question is, what does nonstop awesomeness mean to you?
So that phrase kind of came to me a few years ago now. I had been going through a lot of personal growth and development and just really journaling, like, what do I want to do with my life and what am I experiencing? And I kind of was realizing that I was in this place in my life where I felt very differently from, to put some numbers to it, I think it was, it was 2010. So, I was 29 at the time. And I think about like, okay, when I was 26, what was going on in my life? How was I feeling? And I wasn't feeling as great at 26 as it was now at 29. And it's like, well, what changed? What happened? And how can I articulate this to other people about, what I'm experiencing? And just trying to think about how to encapsulate this, and this phrase nonstop awesomeness just kind of hit me one day as I was journaling. And I was like, yeah, that's what I feel like I'm feeling now. It's just this kind of quality, this sensation that things are always going really well, internally. And it's still an absolute struggle and a challenge, but it's just like, I feel like I'm now operating at a much higher level, energy-wise, vibrationally, and all that kind of stuff than I was before. So it's like, how do I, maintain this kind of high, not intensity, but just consistency in my life, this energy, so that no matter what's coming at me, good, bad, indifferent, I can show up, and just, deal with it in a much richer way, I guess. So that's kind of what that phrase means to me, is that, that life always can be really amazing, and life always is amazing, for showing up, that way to it. So to encapsulate it there.
That's half of life, is showing up. Just got to actually be there.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I mean, you said you were going through some personal things, when you were like 29, and your life was actually better than it was when you were 26.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So what, I mean, did you attend like a conference, or did you meet someone, or was this just a realization that you were at this place in life where you could kind of, grow into something else that you hadn't done before?
Yeah. So one of the big things that really, changed my path is, at 25, I ended a 6-year relationship. Someone I dated all through college and after college. And like, it was a, big part of who I was. And I just got to a place where I wasn't happy in the relationship, and I didn't have the tools to either communicate about that or figure out something to do. As it always works out or happens, it was the best decision for both of us, but at the time it was very challenging. And about 6 months after I ended the relationship, I just didn't know how to process what I was feeling. And so for the first time, I started going to therapy, which was, a big taboo. And, if you grow up in New England, it's like you go to therapy if something is really wrong with you. And then you start to uncover, right, yeah, but then you start to cover, oh no, like, only the crazy people don't go to therapy. Like, everybody should be going to therapy. Like, it's so useful. Yeah. So that was a huge shift in my life, and just experiencing that and the realizations and growth I got through that. And then, it just started to trickle into other areas. I would, be having conversations with other people, or they recommend, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. That was like a, first kind of book in that direction. And then I got more and more involved with personal growth books and journaling. And I now work with this company, Theos, that first introduced me to a lot of material in the, what they call optimal living space. And I'm still working with them to this day in a kind of freelance capacity. And so it started to snowball. And, I feel like I've still made such growth over the last, 3 years since 29 to 32. So it's like I look back, like over the last 6 years, who was I at 26 and who am I now at 32? It's really extraordinary, like for anybody, how much growth we can, we can have in such a short period.
If you just sit down and actually focus on it for a little, take a step back, evaluate your life a little bit, and then decide what you really want and focus on that.
Absolutely. And it was for me, I had just, in 2010, I had finished up this play in Seattle. I was acting in LA. That was kind of my life. And I got cast in this show in Seattle, which was a huge professional accomplishment. Yeah. And, it was regional theater. And it's just like, that's what a lot of stage actors want. And I was very lucky and very thrilled about the project. And, I did it and had a really fantastic time in the city. But I realized that acting didn't really fire me up. And of course you can look back and see how the universe was just lining all these things up. And it was like, it was fun. I enjoyed the cast and all that, but I just never felt really on and really engaged. And when I came back to LA, I wasn't working. I knew after that experience I couldn't go back to a day job. I had tasted this freedom of, doing a play full time, and I needed to figure something else out. And so I just spent a lot of my time journaling and reading and trying to figure out like what my next step would be. And it was really just from, like you said, just kind of really focusing on this material. And for me, it came down to, sensing and seeing that I was a good actor, meaning I was competent. If you gave me something to do, I could take care of it. I was like in this play, I was a good utility player. I had 3 small parts. You didn't really have to worry that, I would F up the show or, make it extraordinary. It just wasn't, that wasn't my role.
You were the go-to guy. But, reliable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great to have those people. But for me, it became like on my own path, do I want to continue putting all of my energy into something that I'm good at? Or do I want to seek out what I might be, maybe the best in the world at or extraordinary at? Those kinds of questions just allowed me to shift my focus off of acting and figure out like, well, where do I want to go? And I, just to briefly say, like, I knew I really liked traveling, even with the little tiny, infinitesimal amount I had done. I enjoyed it. So it was like, okay, well, what would that look like?
Nice. And so from there, you're like, well, let's construct this life. Since now we know the end, let's try to get back to where I'm at and get your milestones to where you wanted to be at the end, right?
Well, I mean, it was, I've been going now for like 2.5 years, traveling. I'm actually, this summer, I'm going to hit 1,000 days on the road, which I'm excited about. And actually, I'll be in either Ecuador or Colombia. I'm not sure where I'll be when July 31st, 2013.
South American country. Nice.
But I mean, like when I started, it was a very simple thing. And I think, because we've chatted a little bit about this, generalist concept and how do you focus on all these things. And I was actually just listening to something this morning that there exists this kind of smart gap sometimes between what you want to accomplish and sometimes that realization of, do I have the brain power to do it? And it could be a creative project, like I know you are writing and you just published a book or the cookbook. There are these things of like, you want to create something extraordinary, and then you start thinking, well, but is my brain capable of it? And one of the things, the ways to deal with that is to look at, well, is there a simpler approach? As opposed to, if you're writing a novel, like writing, the greatest American novel anyone's ever seen since, X. It's just like, well, what if I just write a novel with, a storyline that interests me and go from there, like that kind of thing. Yeah. And so similarly with the travel, I set it up as I had always had my own place. And so now I was getting rid of everything and putting my life down to a backpack. Yeah. But it was like, well, I just lived in Seattle for 3 months, doing that play. And I really had a great experience, felt I got to know that city well. So could I recreate that experience in other places? I picked New York, Chicago, Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco, where actually we're recording this. I'm recording this from San Francisco right now.
Oh, nice.
On my travels here briefly. But those are the 4 cities, and I thought for an entire year, I'll just split up the year among those 4 cities. And it was a very simple beginning, very simple concept. Now, as I got out on the road, I wanted to start traveling more and bouncing around, and then people would invite me places, or I'd get ideas. And so all this stuff, it just, again, snowballed into something that I didn't expect and didn't think, didn't set out to be like, all right, I'm gonna be a nomad. I'm gonna travel the country, and I'm gonna go for thousands of days. Like it was never a concept. It just started, and it started with something very simple too.
And that's how you refer to yourself on your website, as a modern day nomad. And I guess the $10,000 question is, how do you maintain this? Because this is the big question for me, because I'm always interested in how entrepreneurs like yourself, you are an entrepreneur, sir, and how you encourage yourself, how do you stick with it. You've talked a little bit about how you got started, and I love to travel. I have traveled, every year I've gone abroad, but I'll go for like a month or 2 and then I'll come back. I've never cut away like you have, where, I always have a job during my mini projects or something like that. And so I never, as my generati nature does not allow me to put all of my eggs in one basket. I will focus on this, and then I'll focus on this. And that's kind of how I roll. So what makes your outlook different for a little dose of reality for those people who may not be aware? You're basically sort of risking it all on like a cookbook, a show that you're doing, and building this brand that you're creating, which I think will be awesome and never end in the awesomeness. But, it could go nowhere. I mean, how do you know? What keeps you going? What sparks that confidence to believe?
Absolutely. Great questions. My first question, so do I get $10,000 if I answer this correctly?
I think you already got $10,000, sir, from the Kickstarter campaign that you did.
Good point.
Yes.
Well played. Well played.
Successful. See how I wrote that in there?
The universe already rewarded me, so now it's time for me to answer. So the reality is, it is really challenging, and it can be really frustrating and scary and anxiety ridden at times. Absolutely. And I I did not have an entrepreneurial background. That was not my strength going into this. I had always worked for other people. I'd always worked in offices.
And that's comfortable, right? But it feels good a lot of the time.
Yeah, but I had just felt that, especially after doing that play, and having, nowhere to be until 7:00 at night, and having for the first time in my life, probably since I was like a toddler, my day to myself. I was like, what am I going to do today? I can wake up whenever I want. I could take a bike ride or go to a museum or meet friends or, do stuff during the middle of the day when otherwise I'd be at work, in an office.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely been challenging. And I think one of the big things, and I've just kind of realized this recently, is really embracing what your strengths are. And for me, that was doing virtual assistant work and realizing that I'm really passionate about health and wellness, and personal development, that kind of stuff. And so kind of focusing on I would, ideally, I would love to have my own schedule and work with really amazing solo entrepreneurs in these fields doing, virtual assistant work for them, which is fun for me. It's right in, my kind of zone of things I know how to do well.
What kind of stuff is that?
And it's enjoyable. So yeah. So it's, whether it's updating their website or managing newsletter lists or video editing or audio editing, a lot of these things that, as solo entrepreneurs, and I understand this, you end up doing it all yourself, or you start doing it all yourself. And with these particular folks in these fields, their work is usually one-on-one or maybe over the phone or maybe group setting, but it's, kind of more personal nature. And so it's not on the computer. So they have all these things that they want to do, have a website, send out emails, have videos on their site, all this stuff. that they just don't have either the skills in or the time for to learn and know how to do this stuff. So because of my, I had always worked in offices, so I was very comfortable on the computer. That's where this, kind of came to be. But I mean, the other point to realize is, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. To speak to your point, in terms of how you travel, that kind of travel, may work perfectly for you, and it may work perfectly for many other people. I have always kind of worked in extremes or more in extremes the last few years. It's just like, well, it's like I'll create an idea of like, well, I'd like to do some traveling. And then suddenly it's like, well, what if I went to here and here and here? Like my brain just keeps racing. And it was like with the cookbook. I started that as a Kickstarter reward. I was like, I'll make a simple 10 to 15 page recipe guide because I've been making a lot of stuff and people were asking for recipes. I'm like, I'll keep it super simple. And as I started working on it, I started to get really excited about what this could be, what it could have. And I wanted to, not under any obligation, but I wanted to really create something that I thought was going to be amazing and extraordinary and very helpful. So that's where that came of. I'm putting out a lot here, but I want to also address your point of like, how do I keep myself going? And it is
I asked a lot
really
of questions at once there, I said.
it's really about daily fundamentals. Like what are the things that are going to keep you at 100%? Day in and day out. Like that's the important stuff. And so it's, for me, I actually just reached 3 years of daily meditation, and the only thing I'd probably done daily, and I probably even missed a couple days, was brushing my teeth. Like that was probably like my biggest, daily commitment before this.
Yeah, anything that I do daily only happens in the bathroom. Like that's it.
Yeah. And it's like, and it took me almost 30 years to like start flossing every day. But, it's just like, oh God, these things that are so helpful. And flossing, by the way, is such a great thing. If people are looking for like, well, what do I commit to? If you're not committing to flossing, start there because you already know it's good for you. And so if you can wrap your mind and get into the habit of, flossing, then it will lead to other things. And
Step
so
one,
for me,
people, floss.
Start flossing. So, but then I have meditation. I exercise daily. My nutrition is very important in terms of what I'm eating, what I'm not eating. Gratitude, I practice that daily. And then, some other things. And honestly, those kinds of commitments, those kinds of disciplines and meditation specifically have allowed me to focus more. And it's not to say that I'm not still scattered and not still distracted by things, but it's just, how when you have many different interests like I do, I have like wrestled so many times, like journaled, page after page after page with like, well, I love this and I love that and I'm good at this and I'm good at that. Where do I put my energy? That meditation has helped to train my brain because it's not so much, while you're sitting, meditating, it's not so much for that experience, it's for the rest of the day. It's kind of like while we go to the gym to train our muscles, we meditate to train our brain. And so that we stretch and exercise our brain so that we don't get injured in the normal course of life, because things are coming at us. And it's like, how do we use our brain to focus on what we want when we want? And so if that's a creative project or a relationship or things like that. So it's really important, even if you're not nomadic, you're not traveling, to really identify, like, what's the number one thing that if you did on a more consistent basis, if not daily, it would, positively improve your life, and figure that out. Like, and it's probably not anything that, like, I need to tell you. You probably already know, like, yeah, I've heard this a number of times. People have recommended it to me, this, or I know I need to be doing this more. It's like, okay, then stop talking about it.
Yeah. 4 out of 5 dentists recommended the flossing.
Exactly. So it's that speed of implementation concept. Instead of, talking to all your friends and family and journaling about it for months about if this is a good idea, just start, just try it out. Just see, start small. Yeah, if you want to start with meditation, which I highly recommend, start with 2 minutes. That's where I began. And now I'm meditating twice a day, 30 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. And that was
huge.
Incomprehensible to me. when I started, because when I started, it was 2 minutes and it felt like torture. It felt like 2 hours, and I was like, please make this stop. Because for the first time in my life, maybe I would say probably for the first time, I really had to sit and be still with my thoughts. And that is not an easy thing to do. It's like going to a gym and trying to bench press 300 pounds when you've never done that before. It's just, right. It's going to be really, really challenging.
I did like that relation of the gym and meditating, of how you're kind of stretching out your brain so you don't injure it later on with all this barrage of things that you're getting hit with every single day. And I do like your journaling. I've watched the videos of how you keep your journal every day. It's very structured, and you go through things that you want to focus on that day or that you're thankful for that day. Mm-hmm. And that's very important. That's, because usually we wake up, we got things to do. I got to get this stuff done. I got to go here and I got to do this. And this is my to-do list, and that's all I have. And I'm not focusing on those other things that maybe put me at rest a little bit, maybe encourage me a little bit. And just to take a step back and think about those things, I would imagine it's very good for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and I was guilty of this for so many years, most people, when they wake up, they'll roll over. They don't even get out of bed. They just roll over and grab the phone and get immediately on email or Facebook or Twitter. And you're not even giving yourself a chance. You're just, and that was me for many years. I still didn't have a smartphone, but I would get out of bed and I would, on my way into the bathroom, I would turn on the computer so that when I came back, it would, I say exactly.
They're pay no attention, Samsung Galaxy S3. You're beautiful to me.
And so, you cover its ears. And so it really is like, I heard this from Seth Godin, this great marketing guy, and he's just brilliant in terms of business and a lot of life stuff, really. And he said very simply, your inbox is not your to-do list, and it's really it's really understanding that, what is the kind of life that you want to create? Who is the kind of person you want to be? And that doesn't mean that you need to dream, ridiculously large and everybody has to be some kind of titan of industry or world traveler. It's like, no, that might be just like a really amazing, partner, in your relationship, or, father or brother, or, whatever it is. Like, it's just like, what are the kinds of qualities you want to embody, whether that's, being loving or kind or compassionate or funny, just really, I think that's where it starts. And that's where it's kind of started for me is what kind of person do you want to be? And then what kind of practices do you need to have to be that person? If I want to be, really enthusiastic and energized and positive, well, I can't be eating, white bread and peanut butter, and ramen noodles all the time and never exercising. Like, it's just, that's not going to happen, so what kind of person, what kind of things do I need to do to become that person?
That's very cool. And, I've read a lot of Seth Godin stuff as well. One of the things I really liked at a conference he talked about is he told the entire audience to raise their hand as high as they could. And then he said, after a second, when everyone did it, now raise it a little bit higher. And everyone can raise it a little bit higher. And where we originally think that's as high as we can go, we can always go a little bit further. And we don't realize it until someone puts that to us and tells us to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that speaks to, the generati point, of like, you can focus on something, but then maybe you hit an obstacle or a wall, and then you just direct your attention to something else because it's maybe a little easier. And it's like, it's about holding that tension, so like with your book or with my cookbook, it's like, there are points where you reach where you're just like, this is too frustrating. I don't want to do this anymore. And, and maybe it's not even that clear of a conversation in your head, but you have that resistance come up. And it's like, when you take a step back and go, no, I know I can do this. It is a little challenging, but, let me push, as you were saying, like, let me reach a little bit higher. Let me push a little bit further and see if I can get through this resistance, because it's, it's definitely, there's a balance between figuring out, have you run have you run the course with a particular project? Maybe it's just kind of over for you. You don't have the enthusiasm that you did anymore, and now you want to pivot on to something else. I think that's totally valid. The other thing is figuring out, well, is it, are you just hitting that wall, that resistance, and does it still mean as much to you? I mean, like when I think about the show, there are, probably daily reasons why I could just say like, forget it. It would be just so much easier not to do this. Yeah. But when I really think about why did I get into this and what do I feel like I could do with this and the work I want to continue to do with it, that really fuels me. So I think it's really important to, just connect back with why you started. And if that has been fulfilled, if that has been met, then it might be a good reason to move on to another project. But if you still have that same passion and you still want to see it through, then it's about cultivating that discipline in yourself to continue to commit with it. And that discipline will come from these other practices in your life, like meditation, like exercise, like nutrition. As you strengthen that willpower muscle doing one activity, it's going to make other activities, that much easier. So as I, commit to meditation, it absolutely makes committing to a project much easier.
And it always helps to level up yourself. So you kind of start like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this little thing. It's kind of with me with exercising. I'm trying to get a little bit more fit. I'm going to get ripped abs by the end of the summer. It's my plan. And so I have a whole schedule of leveling up, which this week starts with not drinking beer anymore, and that's going to be tough. But that's where I'm going. That's going to be level 2. And then next week I'm going to do more ab workouts and more until July, August time frame. I should be 300 down here. That's what I'm going for. But yeah, the leveling up the milestones is very helpful. Also thinking from the future, I think, is helpful. So think about yourself in the future, where you will be in a year or 2 or 5 years even. Look back on the decisions that you're making right now and think about, well, do I regret making those or not making those decisions? Or is that something I'm really happy that I did? And I try and I feel proud of myself for having done that no matter what comes out of it. And I think that's huge.
Absolutely. It's beginning with the end in mind, where in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or, at the end of the summer, where do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? And then work backwards from that. What do you need to start doing today? Okay, if I want to have ripped abs at the end of the summer, maybe drinking, 6 beers a night. I'm not saying
I'm glad I'm not starting it there. I'm not starting there, but yeah.
Maybe that kind of decision actually won't be that helpful. And, it's okay, that, and for some people it's okay, I can't, I just can't cut out beer out of my life completely. But what if I cut it down to 4 beers a night or, 1 beer a night, whatever, because we have to realize we're dealing with, thousands of years of evolutionary wiring upstairs, and to just throw down a new challenge and commitment is very taxing on the brain. It's why people are so excited about New Year's resolutions, and then come February, they have no idea what any of them were. And it's about starting in a small way, either, forward, either adding something in your life or removing something, starting in such a small way that you do not activate that lizard brain, that evolutionary part of your brain that keeps us safe, but, is not really, it doesn't welcome change. So if you can find a small way, whether it's 2 minutes of meditation or 1 less beer or 10 sit-ups during commercials or 10 push-ups during commercials, whatever it is, finding these small ways so that you're setting yourself up for success, that's really important.
Nice. Let me just ask you a few more questions before we run out of time here. So I know that we talked a little bit about the Kickstarter campaign that you have going on for Travel, Eat, Thrive. Is that definitely going to be the name of the show?
Yep.
Nice. Any idea when that's coming out or what it's going to entail?
So yeah, we raised 10 grand through Kickstarter, which was amazing, which was more than what we needed. And extra money always helps with projects like this. And so right now we're in the editing stage of the pilot, kind of looking at about, probably around a 10-minute finished pilot. And there'll be a lot of ancillary material. I mean, we shot 7 hours of footage, and when I look at it, I'm just like, this is all amazing, and this is all great information and very interesting. I can't put up a 7-hour, documentary, but
right.
If we can find ways to drip this information out to people, I think it'll be really great. Strategy has never been a strong suit for me, but I'm certainly working on it with this project. I would say, I'm hoping maybe by the end of the summer or September, because what I'd like to do is just have everything ready. The pilot, the ancillary videos, the blog posts, the guides, the maps, everything that kind of visionarily, if that's a word, I have upstairs. I want to have that all together. Yeah, exactly. I want to have that all out there so that when people go to the site, it's not just like, oh, okay, that's cool, and I guess I'll have to come back and find out more. It's like, no, let's just give them everything, a taste of what's ahead, so that they can figure out oh yeah, this is something I want to stay involved with and check out. So I'm hoping certainly by 2014. That's my prayer to the people upstairs, and I don't mean in the next apartment. That is my prayer that it does happen before next year, and if it happens by the end of the summer, great. It's obviously going to be online. And, with things like this, you take meetings to talk about, whether network route or online, Netflix route or, things like that. And it all kind of remains to be seen, what would be the best fit creatively, for this project.
Yeah, it sounds like you are getting a handle on all that strategizing and promo, because that is the toughest part of all this, I feel like.
And absolutely. And it's, again, I feel daily, I feel in over my head, but it's okay, I pull back. How do I make this simple? How do I make it fun? Right now we're choosing music for the show, and I first approached this going, I don't know anything about, I don't know where to find music or what to do or and I was like, all right, hold on, slow down, Nathan, keep it simple. Go through your iTunes library. What songs do you like? Start there. Great. Now go to Audio Jungle, which is a site where you can license music. Just start playing stuff. What did people rank highly? What do other people like? Don't make it a task where you have to, listen to all, 10,000 songs in their library. Just pick a few. What do you like? Great. And realize there is no perfect solution. There's no perfect song. There's no perfect clip. It's just, make it easy on yourself so that you can just because all these decisions are just distractions. You're just getting in the way. Just keep moving forward. None of this is going to make or break the project. For all I know, this might end up being just a proof of concept that leads me somewhere else to an even bigger project that I would not have gotten to had I not completed this pilot in the first place.
Exactly. It's kind of a rite of passage, just like getting a degree in college. It just says that you can do this, and now you go on with whatever projects you have. Well, nice. Well, this is Recipes for the Road Volume 1 is out now on your website. Will there be a Volume 2?
That's the fun part. Is well, it's certainly in the works up here because it's as soon as I publish it, I'd be meeting people and I'm like, oh man, that's a great recipe, or it kind of starts with desserts. It seems to be, as I seem to find, is that I've been coming across some great dessert recipes and I'm like, man, that tastes great, and I've some feedback from the cookbook early on. I've asked people, I'm like, oh, so what do you try? And they're like, I've tried the desserts, and I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, if you start in the dessert section, totally fine.
It's the
at least you're eating, probably.
Right.
Exactly. And in my mind, what is in that section of the book, is, much healthier than a lot of the, dessert options that are out there. So if that's what gets you into healthier eating, that's your path. Awesome.
Nice. Well, once again, we are speaking with Nathan Agin, and he is the author of Nonstop Awesomeness in the Kitchen, Recipes for the Road, Volume number 1. And you can pick it up and read it at Nathan Agin's website at nonstopawesomeness.me. Nathan, before we go, do you have any quick gems of wisdom for someone who might be unhappy in their cubicle and wishing that they could cut away but don't really know how to get started?
I would say in addition to identifying what is your number one practice you could do, identify what is something that is really important to you, that is really meaningful for you, something maybe creative that you want to do, and start carving out time, even if it's 15 minutes in the morning before you leave for work, so that you can start working on that project. You can start writing that novel, painting that picture, or whatever, because that is going to be a way for you to create meaning and make meaning in your day. Regardless of what else happens, you will have done something personally fulfilling. This is a practice I use daily, and it really has changed how productive I've been and what I've been able to accomplish. So start with, making meaning in your day.
And just get started. Nice. Well, thank you, Nathan, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Zach. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Good times.